It's time. It's episode 67 of the ATM podcast. Mark Watson joining me, an international commentator of much acclaim, so many Olympic Games covered, calls all kinds of sports everywhere around the world, and prides himself, whenever you ring him, answers the phone, the House of Excellence, blood peeing through the eyeballs, the Hurt Locker, Watto.
Oh, you pretty summed it up. I get emotional when you say that,
Go
Martin.
on.
Yeah, the old hurt box, mate. It's a dark place. Few people know how to go there, my friend.
Apologise to me!
You know, we had an interview with John Mitchell to start the show today. Mitch debunking a lot of myths that are mainstream media fed here about women's rugby. And we've got this whole idea that up the north, they've got unlimited resources, unlimited playing strength, that the competitions are watched by tens of thousands of people, that they're all over the television. No. He has just clearly spelt it out for us. He said it is a bit like when men went professional in 1995 and 96. He said it took a long time for it to actually grow some roots. He says they've got 30 contracted players, Mark. They've got a handful of other contracts. But he said essentially when it comes to team training at 5, he waits till 6 because most of the women have jobs and they turn up after that and they arrive after their actual day job. He said it's not a case of just throwing money at it and that works. And he said that most of the games aren't live on TV. Some of them are streamed. He said, but we're battling the whole time. We are building it. Well, wouldn't it be nice if New Zealand rugby accepted that instead of trying to ram it down our throats that this thing is up there with, the Australian Open tennis and Super Bowl?
Yeah, look, I agree. I've always used the word, and you've heard me say it, just let it organically grow. But, like I say, there's a strong women's agenda, political agenda that runs through our media, and they're just so desperate for this to have a point of view on par with the men's. And the reality is it's not there, but everybody's too scared to say it. I think all rugby players have the ability to have jobs. I did one of the toughest sports on the planet in the Ironman, where you've got 3 disciplines and you're training 35, 40 hours a week. I still managed to work part-time as a lifeguard at the Auckland Tepid Baths and do some swim coaching. And, this sort of nonsense that you need to be full-time to achieve in rugby and therefore you need to get paid it's just an absolute myth, and someone needs to sort of shut that down. But yeah, it's not going to pay for itself. I don't think it'll ever pay for itself, to be perfectly honest. But in saying that, I think domestic rugby in this country is heading down that path too, where it's going to struggle to pay for itself as well outside of the All Blacks.
I don't think it probably does in this country anymore. And you've got NPC teams now that are moving to local council grounds because crowds aren't turning up. Just on the same theme here, and I'm not picking on these two women who are our two greatest cricketers at the moment, and that's Sophie Devine and Amelia Kerr. But again, where are the stories a la Trent Boult? Trent Boult, of course, decided that he'd rather play these silly T20 franchise tournaments and T10s and 100s and 7-a-side cricket or whatever it is in the United States than playing for the Black Caps, pick and choose his time. Well, we've got 2 of our leading women who are doing exactly the same, yet not one single word is ever said about this as far as the mainstream media are concerned. And I understand that this is the way it is these days, but for Amelia Kerr and for Sophie Devine, who decide that they don't want to play the Super Smash, that they'd rather play the richer competitions, that they'll pick and choose when they play for New Zealand, I don't see... Look, if you want to be called professional, then you're going to have to be treated like a professional, which is what the whole point of it is. Why don't we analyse, theorise, criticise the same? Because this is a legitimate story.
Because every male journalist is terrified of being labelled a misogynist, terribly labelled of being a sexist, and the women journalists don't want to do it because they've got their political agenda. Look, look, Devine, and go and do what they want. I don't care because I don't watch it. I don't think anybody watches it. I don't think any male I know watches women's cricket, to be perfectly bloody blunt. And that's just the honesty of it. I've got a colleague that I do a bit of work with on another radio station, a cricket. Somebody of huge respect who knows their cricket really well, and he'd been watching a lot of the women's domestic game and said some of the fielding and some of the catching is dreadful, but at not one point do the cricket commentators critique it. At not one point do they actually say that is just awful cricket, that's a catch that should have been taken. So they want to be treated as professionals, they want parity with the men, but they want to cherry pick what parts of it, and that frustrates the hell out of me. We're not picking them apart personally and saying, they're terrible people, they're terrible daughters, they're terrible mothers, they're terrible whatever. Just purely in a sporting sense. We do it for the men, we should be able to do it for the women, and we should be able to do it with freedom without certain journalists in this country trying to then end our careers and labelling us with unfair terminologies. You're right, Martin. There's no parity at all. They want equity, but there's no equity. There's no equity, mate. There's just a
And I think it's patronising, and I keep using that word because, but I think it's patronised because I think that most of these women would rather that they were actually put on the same level, treated on the same level, and discussed on the same level.
Apologise to me!
Speaking of the TV cricket commentators, Brendan Telfer on the show last week, on the back of what Ian Smith had said, and Telf broke it down in the way that he does. Now, you're talking about a guy with Brendan that's got 50 years experience in the business, and
Absolutely.
Ian Smith, who's got 30 years, and these guys have a right to have their opinions, and Brendan's opinion is, he said that he thinks the TVNZ commentators, the old Spark crowd, do a good job, but he says he wishes that the likes of Scott Stevenson would stop talking and let the actual game breathe. Now, Ian Smith made a comment about shithouse commentary or whatever. It's a bit of an off-the-cuff comment. When I got in touch with him, he said he just wants more oomph and more excitement put into the commentaries. Look, these two guys, I defend their right to say whatever it is about other people that do their job. I agree with some of it. I don't agree with all of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I grew up with Brendan Telfer and Peter Williams and the likes of the Keith Quinns and those wonderful commentators. In fact, I remember when I got my break and I got to go to the Beijing Olympics. I was a kid in a candy store and I'd grown up, and John Macbeth and Peter Montgomery, and I went out for dinner in Beijing. Second night I was there, and I sat down. I had Peter Williams next to me, had Brendan Telfer across from me. I had John Macbeth, Keith Quinn and Peter Montgomery, and I was just a kid in a candy store. These are the guys I grew up to listen to. These are the guys that had inspired me, and here I was sitting down having dinner with them at my first Olympics, and I've never forgotten it. And whatever people think of them, I've only ever had utter respect for them. But look, I think commentary is an interesting one, Martin. Look, I've done 4 Olympics, and I've done some of the pretty big events at the Olympics, and look, some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you. It's very subjective. Of course,
that's it, absolutely.
But I do think, though, the standard of commentary in this country is pretty damn poor at the moment. I do. And I think a lot of it goes back to identity politics. A lot of it goes back to wanting this whole equity when it comes to having commentators. And I just don't think a lot of them are schooled enough.
Well, I don't think
a lot of them understand the basics.
I don't think there's any preparation. No, there isn't. And I know that Sky TV put no money and no resources and no training into it. They throw these people in there and they flounder, and they spend their first couple of years floundering. Now, I point the finger at rugby league, I pointed at football at the moment, and I find that for most of the preview games, I just mute it because look, to me, it's just unprofessional is what it is, and it's below the level and standard that I would expect for somebody who has the privilege of that job. And I'm not pointing the finger at the individuals, I'm just saying, you can't get behind a microphone like you can't go and work in a tyre shop without some training. I can't just go, I think I can change a tyre, but I can't fit and balance a wheel, Mark. I can't do that. And I can't pretend to go into Tony's tyre service and say that I can. So why the hell do you think you can get behind a microphone and actually all of a sudden you're going to be good at it? You're not. It's simple as that.
Well, Martin, and I know, particularly in a talkback game, the subtleties of it, how you get calls. And it's only when if you sat down with me and I said, look, this is how I can get calls when perhaps other people can't, or this is how you deal with a caller, and this is how you halfway through an interview remind people who you're talking to, and so that people that just getting into the car switching on for the first time. There's all those little subtleties. There are certain conventions with commentary as well, and I was very lucky. And I've still found my own style. I've learned at the end of the day I've still got to be me. But I was lucky that my first games I did get to work with a lot with the John Macbeths and stuff, who were very good at just saying, hey, just pull it back here a little bit, Mark, just watch this. But what I want to see is if we've got former cricket players in the commentary box, they should be in the expert role. They're there to provide the absolute detail.
Absolutely,
They're not the lead commentators. Right. Now, the lead commentators, you can get away with guys like me, a play-by-play guy, who might sit back, and I thought I did it quite well with the Tuatara baseball, where you might get a guy who's a thorough expert and you go, hey, can you, just for the non-baseball aficionado, can you just explain and break down what you mean by the curveball? And so you then have that information relayed to a public who might not know much about it. And I think that enhances the commentary. But I think the other danger is that a lot of commentators want to be the star of the show. They want to be the celebrity. I've got zero time for that stuff like the ACC, whatever they call it, the alternative cricket commentary. I just think that stuff is just cringeworthy. I think they've made it, the moment those guys are on, it's all about them. And I just want to watch the game. And I just want to get on with it. And I know that there's some sort of parody to it, but I just think it just starts to wear thin a little bit after a while. But look, I think Sky Television even worse. Going back to our women's product. So you've got a sport that you're trying to promote. And so let's try and get women's rugby going. Well, they think, well, we've got a women's game. We need to have women's commentator. Wrong. You just need to have the best commentators. Now, you take a women's game and you put Tony Johnson or you put Grant Nisbet around it with Justin Marshall, and that thing is going to be enhanced tenfold to taking some former players who have got no commentary experience and putting them in control of it. Because most of your audience, believe it or not, are still going to be male.
Most of it's male.
Most of your audience are just going to switch off, Martin.
Apologise to me!
All right, we've got a few other topics to talk about, including your Liverpool, who are top of the table at the moment, your Blues, how you think they're going to go this year. The fan-centric and fan engagement words that Mark Robinson used, CEO of New Zealand Rugby, last year. I'm fascinated to see how this unfolds through Super Rugby, and I'm a big fan of the NFL, you know that. Now, yesterday I watched the Buffalo Bills collapse, lose at home again, the snake-bitten franchise. What impressed me the most is their quarterback, Josh Allen, fronted at the press conference immediately afterwards. The guy that missed the crucial kick that would have taken it to overtime, as gutted as he was, he fronted afterwards. And that's part of their contracts. Now, you know, I know for a fact that if that was the All Blacks, the guy that misses the kick in the World Cup final, he doesn't front. I mean, Geordie Barrett spoke about it this week, and that's months after the event, right? And this is where New Zealand Rugby's got to get its head out of its backside and go, the fans are the game. If you want to engage, then give us what we want. We want to hear from that guy. We don't want to hear from the guy who didn't have any real great difference maker in the game. We want to hear from the person who just missed it. Sam Cane, as an example, what happened in the Super Rugby final last year? Oh, he's so gutted he never fronted the press conference afterwards, right? And then that would never happen in American sport. So this is what I'm looking for from New Zealand Rugby. You know, throwing another, HD, highly overproduced documentary on NZR Plus is not fan engagement. Doing another promo piece on your Instagram isn't fan engagement. Fan engagement is bringing those athletes to us as much as possible. Are they going to be doing that? I think the answer is no, because they've never done it.
No, they won't do it. They don't know how to do it. They're not interested. The only people that they're interested in, mate, the only people that win in this game at the moment are the players. It's all about the players. It's all about the Players Association, mate. It's all about protecting the players. I want to hear from the referees after a contentious decision.
Yeah.
Now, whether it be the referee itself, I want to hear immediately after the game why that ruling was made. Now, I don't have a problem if people make mistakes as a referee. I just want some sort of justification on it, Martin. I want the playmakers to be there. You talk when the All Blacks lose, the first thing I want to hear from an All Black coach and a captain is apologies to the New Zealand public for letting you down. The performance was not good enough. Rather than going, the sun will come up in the morning and all this other rubbish and crap that I hear, and look, I think we're in a nice place heading to the World Cup in 18 months' time, so you've got some sort of get out of jail excuse, Go back to the days of if the All Blacks lose, a nation mourns, which I think was what Zinzan Brooks said to the All Blacks as they were on a bus to Twickenham in 1993, just reminding the players what was at stake. But, you go back to the English Premier League, and we talk about this every week, Martin. Every time you see Jurgen Klopp there out on the field at the crowd at Anfield giving them the 3 fist pump, and everything comes back to the fans, and you go on and have a look at their social media, and there's Mo Salah. Okay, it's a sponsors thing, but he's knocking on the door of a Liverpool fan who's in a wheelchair, and they're turning up with Virgil van Dijk, and they're presenting them with the latest jersey for next season and tickets, and they're bringing them down to the training ground, and they're doing all this stuff, and they take you behind the scenes, and they take you into training, and they personalise these people. And then when there's controversy, they discuss the controversy, and it's all over it. And they've got television shows and pundits who pick the game apart positively and negatively. There are scandals. What do we get? We just get the same cliched rubbish. And then we go back to a Sky Television studio, and it's just a bunch of cheerleaders telling us what we already know, Martin. And God, just talking to you like this, I'm bored, Martin. I'm going to start to snore in a minute, Martin. Why are we talking rugby?
All right, let's move on.
I thought we had an agreement last week, Martin, that we weren't going to talk rugby, Martin.
Last couple of topics then. And this is quick fire. Where are your Blues going to finish? Because I'll tell you in Super Rugby now, you're not making the final and you're not winning it. So I don't care where you finish. But those, okay, all right. Where are the Warriors going to finish this year, Mark? What is the absolute bare minimum for the Warriors?
Oh, look, I think it'll be hard to reach the top 4 this year, but I think they'll go 6. I think they'll go inside the top 6. I think they will have a good, solid season. Can they go top 4? Oh, I'm not sure. I just don't know. I mean, I know they had such a great year last year, but when you've been burnt so badly by this team for so long, I still sort of err on the side of been a little bit conservative. I'd love to see them make the top 4. Like I say, they have finally got what we've just talking about. They've finally got what rugby haven't got. And hopefully when rugby, well, that won't happen, but halfway through the season when they see Mount Smart Stadium filling up and nobody tuning up to Eden Park and no one tuning up to any game around the country, hopefully the little light switch goes on, you know?
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.